An orphan girl visits every day the hospital where her mother died, waiting for a transplant that never came. There she meets a terminally ill boy and decides, on her own initiative, to donate part of her own liver to save him. What she didn't know was that the boy's father was a millionaire, and when he finds out, he does the unbelievable. Before listening to this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more exciting tales. The smell of hospital disinfectant was something Helena, at 7 years old, had already grown accustomed to. Her small footsteps echoed through the corridor of the central hospital as she held tightly to the hand of Rose. Her guardian since her mother, Agnes, had passed away after a long wait for a liver transplant that never came. The hospital, an imposing complex in the most prestigious area of the capital, had become a kind of second home for the girl. "Grandma Rose, can we visit the garden today?" asked Helena, her brown eyes shining with an unusual maturity for her age. The hospital's inner garden was her favorite place, a green refuge amidst the sterile white of the corridors. Rose, with her grey hair and hands marked by time, nodded. "Of course, my love," after leaving the flowers for Nurse Viola, as we always do. The two followed their weekly ritual, visiting the floor where Agnes had spent her last days. It was Helena's way of keeping alive the memory of her mother and the lessons she had taught her about kindness and generosity. As she turned the corner, Helena stopped abruptly. Something was different. Unusual activity in the children's ward caught her attention. Doctors were rushing around, nurses exchanged worried glances. Curious, the girl approached the window of one of the rooms and saw a boy her age, pale and frail, connected to various machines. "Who is he, Grandma?" she asked, without taking her eyes off the scene. Rose pulled her gently. "We shouldn't peek, Helena. Let's continue on our way." But before they could leave, a tall man in an impeccable suit exited the room, passing by them without noticing their presence. His face showed clear signs of despair and sleepless nights. "It's Mr. Raphael Müller," one nurse whispered to another, near where Helena was. "The owner of the hospital. His son Theo worsened overnight. They urgently need a compatible donor." Helena felt something strange in her chest, as if her mother were whispering in her ear. She remembered the stories Agnes told about how helping others was the greatest gift anyone could give. The following week, against Rose's advice, Helena insisted on returning to the hospital. This time she crept stealthily into the boy's room, while Rose chatted with a former colleague in the reception area. Theo was awake, but his blue eyes seemed distant, lost on the white ceiling. Helena hesitated at the door, but something impelled her inside. "Hi," she said simply. The boy turned his head slowly, surprised by the unexpected visitor. "Hi," he replied weakly. "Who are you?" "Helena." "And you're Theo, right?" "I heard the doctors talking." She approached the bed. "Are you sick?" Theo nodded. "My liver isn't working properly. I need a new one, but it's hard to find someone who can give me a piece." Helena frowned thoughtfully. "My mother also needed a new liver. She always said that if she could, she would give pieces of herself to other people who needed it." The conversation was interrupted when Dr. Olivia Allianz, the hospital's chief physician, entered the room. Tall, with impeccable posture and a stern expression, she looked at Helena in surprise. "What is this girl doing here?" "This is no place for visiting children," he said firmly. At that moment, Raphael Müller entered right behind the doctor. Unlike Olivia's professional demeanor, his tired eyes softened as he watched his son interacting with the unexpected visitor. "She's my friend," Theo declared, with a force that surprised everyone, including his father. Raphael knelt beside Helena. "Thank you for keeping my son company. I am Raphael Müller." "Helena," the girl replied, extending her hand as her mother had taught her. "Your hand is trembling, sir. My mother used to say that happens when we are very afraid." A heavy silence filled the room. The billionaire, accustomed to commanding respect and fear in the corridors of his business empire, felt completely disarmed by the child's sincere observation. "Your son will be fine," Helena continued confidently. "My mother is watching over him from above." Olivia interrupted the moment. "Mr. Müller, we have the results of the latest tests to discuss." Helena was gently led out, but not before hearing the doctor mention critical condition and waiting list, words she knew all too well. Back in the waiting room, Rose greeted her with a mixture of relief and reprimand. "Helena, where were you?" I was worried. I met a boy who is sick just like his mother was, Helena replied simply. That night, while Rose prepared tea in the small kitchen of the modest apartment where they lived, Helena remained unusually silent. Her thoughts were with Theo, with his distant gaze and with her father's barely disguised despair. "Grandma," she finally called, "how can someone give a piece of their liver to another person?" Rose almost dropped her cup. "Why are you asking that, dear?" "That boy in the hospital, Theo. He needs a new piece of my liver. What if I could give him a piece of mine?" "Helena!" Rose sat down stunned. "Where did she get that idea?" "Mom always said we should help those in need," Helena replied simply. "And I'm strong, Grandma." "Mom always said that." Rose hugged her granddaughter, feeling a mixture of pride and fear. Agnes's kindness lived on through Helena, but the idea was absurd. Or perhaps it wasn't. At the hospital, Raphael Muller was bent over stacks of medical reports in the director's office. The clock read 3:12 in the morning, but sleep had eluded him weeks ago. There must be a solution, he murmured to himself, running his hands through his disheveled hair. Dr. Olivia entered without knocking. "Raphael, you need to rest. It won't help Theo at all if you get sick too." "How can I rest? My son is dying and all my money can't buy what he needs most right now." Her voice broke. "What's the point of all this, Olivia? This hospital, these companies, what's the point of owning half the world if I can't save my own son?" Olivia placed her hand on her shoulder. "We're doing everything we can. The waiting list. Don't talk to me about that damn list." Raphael slammed his fist on the table. "We've already examined all the possibilities. Nobody in the family is compatible, not even me. It's like fate is mocking me." Meanwhile, Helena slept in her small room dreaming of her mother. In the dream, Agnes smiled and pointed to the hospital in the distance. "Remember, Helena," she said, "true strength comes from the heart. Sometimes the greatest gifts are those we cannot see or touch." Helena woke up with absolute certainty. She knew exactly what she needed to do, and not even Rose could dissuade her. What little Helena couldn't imagine was that her innocent and courageous decision was about to connect past and present, unearth painful secrets, and forever transform the lives of everyone around her. Destiny had traced an unexpected path, linking Helena and Theo's stories in a way no one could have predicted. The next morning, Helena woke up determined. During breakfast, while Rose spread strawberry jam on toast, the girl gathered all her courage. "Grandma Rose, I want to go to the hospital today. I need to talk to the doctors about donating a piece of my liver to Theo." Rose dropped the knife, which clinked against the plate. Her elderly eyes widened with astonishment and concern. "Helena, my angel, you're just a child. This isn't something children can decide. Besides, donating an organ is a serious, complicated procedure." "Mom taught me that helping others is what makes us special," Helena insisted, determination shining in her brown eyes. "What if I can save Theo, Grandma? What if I can do what no one else could do for Mom?" Rose sat down slowly, her hands trembling. The girl in front of her, with disheveled braids and a slightly oversized school uniform, suddenly seemed much older than her 7 years. She possessed the same stubbornness that Agnes had always shown. "My love, there are rules, procedures. It's not that simple. Can we at least ask?" Helena pleaded. "Please, Grandma, it's important." After hours of conversation and restrained tears, Rose finally gave in. "Not to authorize any medical procedure," she clarified firmly, "but only to consult a professional who could explain to Helena why her idea, however noble, was impossible." Upon arriving at the Central Hospital, Rose asked to speak with Dr. Viola, a pediatrician who had treated Helena during a bout of the flu the previous winter. The doctor, a young woman with a kind smile, listened attentively as the girl explained her intention in simple but determined words. "Helena," Viola began gently, "your heart is very generous. But donating an organ is a very serious matter, especially for someone as young as you." "But Theo needs it," Helena argued. "And I'm strong," Mom always said. "My liver must be strong too." Dr. Viola exchanged a glance with Rose, then turned to Helena. "You know that people need to be compatible for donation, right? Like pieces of a puzzle that need to fit together perfectly. Can we find out if I fit in?" Helena asked. After a long conversation, driven more by a desire to educate Helena about the medical process than by the expectation of compatibility, Dr. Viola agreed to perform a basic blood test. It was a way to demonstrate to the girl the complexity of the process and, at the same time, to appreciate her compassion. But even if you were a match, which is extremely unlikely, there are many other considerations, the doctor explained. What no one expected was the result that arrived 2 days later. Helena was potentially compatible with Theo. A preliminary result that, while far from conclusive, was surprising enough to catch the attention of the medical team. The news quickly reached Dr. Olivia Allianz. The chief physician immediately called a meeting with Rose and Helena, which was joined by Dr. Viola and Dr. Marco, the pediatric hepatologist in charge of Theo's case. "I understand the nobility of the gesture," Olivia said in a deliberately neutral voice, "but we need to be absolutely clear. Living organ donation involving minors is an extremely sensitive issue and, in most cases, is not even considered. But if I can help," Helena began. "Further tests would be necessary," interrupted Dr. Marco, unable to completely conceal his scientific interest. "And even then there are ethical, psychological and legal issues that would need to be carefully evaluated." "What tests?" Helena asked. The next 2 hours were filled with simplified explanations about advanced blood typing, tissue evaluation, imaging tests, and functional analyses. To everyone's surprise, Helena asked insightful questions, absorbing each piece of information with an unusual seriousness for her age. "I want to take these tests," he declared at the end. An uncomfortable silence settled in the room. It was Rose who broke it, her voice trembling with emotion. "If, and only if, these tests are safe for Helena, and if this helps show her that there are other ways to help the boy, I authorize the preliminary tests. Only the non-invasive ones," he added quickly. What should have been just a formality, an educational gesture, turned into something unexpected when, a week later, the full results arrived. Helena was, by some improbable quirk of fate, compatible with Theo at levels rarely seen between unrelated people. The news was met with disbelief by the medical team. Dr. Olivia examined the results repeatedly, as if expecting to find some error. "This is extraordinary," murmured Dr. Marco, adjusting his glasses as he studied the data. The information was kept secret away from Raphael Muller's ears. The team decided they shouldn't raise false hopes, especially considering that, regardless of compatibility, there was the seemingly insurmountable obstacle of Helena's age. However, fate intervened again. 2 nights later, Theo suffered an acute crisis. His body was rapidly rejecting palliative treatment, and doctors estimated he had only days, perhaps hours, if radical intervention was not performed. Raphael, distraught in tears beside his son's bedside, confronted Dr. Olivia. "There must be something, anything we can do." It was at that moment that Dr. Marco, driven by a mixture of desperation and scientific fascination, revealed the existence of a potentially compatible donor. "A 7-year-old girl," he explained, carefully avoiding looking at Olivia, whose expression had hardened. "An extraordinary match." "A child?" Raphael seemed confused. "How is that possible?" "Who are the parents?" "I need to talk to them immediately." "Her guardian, actually," Marco corrected. "It's a complex situation." Meanwhile, in the small apartment where they lived, Helena woke with a start. She had dreamt of Theo, pale and weak in his hospital bed. "Grandma," she called, entering Rose's room, "we need to go to the hospital. Theo needs me." Rose, sleepy and confused, tried to calm her granddaughter, attributing the premonition to a simple nightmare. But Helena was insistent, with an almost supernatural conviction. "Now, Grandma, we can't wait until morning." Reluctantly, Rose got dressed and, even though it was almost midnight, took Helena to the hospital. She hoped that a short walk through the quiet corridors would be enough to calm the girl's agitation. What they found, however, was a hospital in full swing, with medical teams rushing to the pediatric ward. "See, Grandma?" "I knew it," said Helena, her little face lit up with a quiet certainty. On their way to Theo's room, they crossed paths with Raphael, who was walking briskly alongside Dr. Marco. Upon seeing Helena, the doctor stopped abruptly. "It's her," he said to Raphael, "the potential donor." Raphael looked at the little girl, the same one who had visited his son days before. His eyes red with tiredness and worry, filled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. You want to help my son?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I want to give him a piece of my liver," Helena replied simply. "My liver is strong and I can share it." Rose, realizing the seriousness of the situation, tried to intervene. "Helena, darling, we've already talked about this. It's not that simple." "Actually," interrupted Dr. Marco, "Theo's condition has deteriorated drastically. We're considering unconventional options." Dr. Olivia approached, her heels echoing in the silent hallway. Her face was composed behind a mask of professionalism, but her eyes revealed an intense internal struggle. "We need to talk in private," he said firmly, directing the group toward an empty conference room. What followed was an intense ethical, medical, and legal debate. Rose, protective and cautious, demanded absolute guarantees that Helena would not be at risk. Raphael oscillated between desperate hope and overwhelming guilt for considering accepting the sacrifice of another child. Dr. Olivia presented technical and ethical objections, while Dr. Marco passionately defended the viability of the procedure. Helena sat silently, watching the adults debate her future and Theo's. When she finally had a chance to speak, her small voice silenced the room. "If I don't help, what happens to Theo?" The silence that followed was more eloquent than any answer. The girl nodded as if confirming something she already knew. "Then there is no choice," he concluded simply. Hours later, after urgent consultations with the ethics committee, legal experts and psychologists, an unprecedented decision was made. The early morning hours at the Central Hospital were silent, except for the occasional sound of equipment and the discreet movement of the medical team. In the first hours of that extraordinary morning, 2 stretchers traveled down the corridor towards the operating room, one carrying Theo Muller, whose yellowish skin revealed the seriousness of his condition, and the other carrying Helena, who maintained a disconcerting serenity for a child about to undergo such complex surgery. Rose walked beside her granddaughter, holding her small hand. Her silent prayers mingled with a fear she desperately tried to hide. Behind her, Raphael Müller followed the medical procession like a man in a trance, torn between hope for his son's life and the weight of responsibility for what was about to happen to Helena. "Everything will be all right." "Grandma," Helena whispered, reversing the roles of comfort. "Mom is watching over us." In the preparation room, Dr. Viola performed the final checks before the anesthesia. "Helena, you are the bravest girl I have ever met. When you wake up, it will all be over, and you will have done something incredible." Helena smiled. "You'll take good care of my little piece of liver, won't you, so that it grows strong in Theo?" The doctor swallowed hard, moved by the simplicity and depth of the question. "We'll take very good care of him. I promise." As the anesthesia began to take effect, Helena felt herself floating. Her last conscious thoughts were of her mother, Agnes, wondering if she would be proud. The procedure lasted 8 hours. Dr. Marco led the team responsible for removing a portion of Helena's liver, while Dr. Olivia personally supervised the transplant to Theo. The tension in the operating room was palpable. Everyone involved was aware of the unprecedented nature of the operation. In the waiting room, Rose and Raphael shared a silence heavy with anxiety. 2 people from completely different worlds, united by their love for 2 children whose destinies were now irreversibly intertwined. "She talks a lot about her mother," Rose finally said, breaking the silence. "Agnes always taught her to think of others." Raphael nodded, unable to find the right words. The name Agnes stirred a vague unease within him, like a familiar melody whose origin he couldn't pinpoint. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Dr. Marco appeared in the doorway of the waiting room, still wearing his surgical cap. His face showed the weariness of hours of intense concentration, but his eyes shone. "The surgery was a success," he announced with a restrained smile. "Helena is stable. The liver fragment was removed precisely and is already being transplanted into Theo. Both of their vital signs are excellent." Rose broke down in tears of relief, while Raphael squeezed the doctor's hand tightly, unable to express in words the gratitude he felt. 2 hours later, Dr. Olivia also brought good news. Theo's liver was functioning. The first few hours were critical, but the initial indicators were promising. The following days passed in a succession of monitors, medications, and medical bulletins. Helena regained consciousness first, complaining of the pain with surprising stoicism. Her first question was about Theo. "He's getting better," Rose replied, sitting beside his bed. "Thanks to you, my angel." Theo took longer to wake up. When he finally opened his eyes, his father was beside him, holding his hand. Color was already beginning to return to his cheeks, a sign that the new liver was working. "Dad?" he murmured, his voice hoarse from the recent intubation. "I'm here, son," Raphael replied, his voice choked with emotion. "The girl, Helena, she really gave me a piece of herself?" Raphael nodded, unable to hold back his tears. "Yes, Theo, she gave you a very special gift." On the 5th day after surgery, when both children were conscious and stable, Helena insisted on seeing Theo. The doctors initially hesitated, concerned about the risk of infection, but the girl's determination was unwavering. "I need to know if my little piece is working well in it," he argued with irrefutable logic. Finally, they allowed a brief meeting. Helena was taken in a wheelchair to Theo's room, where the boy was anxiously waiting for her. "Hi," she said shyly, suddenly aware of the awkwardness of the situation. "Hi," Theo replied, a weak smile lighting up his still pale face. "Thank you for saving me." Helena smiled back. "How are you feeling?" "Tasul Kate better. The doctors say his liver is functioning perfectly." "That's good. I told him to take good care of you." The simplicity of the dialogue between the two children contrasted with the depth of the bond they now shared. Raphael and Rose, observing the scene from the doorway, felt the weight of the moment. While the children recovered, Raphael Muller embarked on a personal investigation. The name Agnes continued to echo in his mind, provoking a growing unease. He requested Helena's complete medical records and family history, using his power as the hospital's owner. It was on a rainy afternoon, sitting in his private office on the top floor of the hospital, that the truth hit him with the force of a physical blow. Agnes Liman, Helena's mother, had been a patient at that same hospital 3 years earlier. She suffered from a progressive liver condition and had requested to be placed on the transplant list. Her request had been denied by the evaluation committee, the committee that he, Raphael Muller, chaired. The pages of the medical record trembled in her hands. She vaguely remembered the case, one among dozens that passed through her desk monthly. Agnes did not meet some of the technical criteria established by the protocol. The form bore her signature approving the denial. The irony was devastating. The daughter of the woman he had indirectly condemned was now saving her own son. Raphael dropped the documents on the floor and covered his face with his hands. The universe seemed to be giving him a brutal lesson in cosmic justice. That same afternoon, Dr. Olivia entered his office without knocking, finding him still absorbed in his dark thoughts. "Raphael, we need to talk," he announced, closing the door behind him. He looked up, immediately noticing the tension on the doctor's face. "I found out about Agnes Liman," he said simply. Olivia visibly paled, something rare for someone with her self-control. "How?" "I asked for Helena's complete medical history." "Why, did you know?" The doctor hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. "Yes, I recognized the name when the girl started visiting the hospital regularly, but I didn't think it was relevant to mention, considering the circumstances." Raphael stared at her for a long time. There was something about Olivia's hesitation that didn't seem natural. "Relevant? The daughter of a patient we rejected for transplant is donating part of her liver to my son. That's not just relevant, Olivia, it's..." He searched for the right word, providential, or perhaps a punishment. "You're being melodramatic," Olivia replied, regaining her composure. "The committee's decisions are based on technical criteria. You know that. We just follow protocol." "The protocol," Raphael repeated bitterly. "The same protocol that we are now ignoring by allowing a 7-year-old child to be a donor." Olivia adjusted her lab coat, a gesture Raphael knew well. She always did that when she was uncomfortable. "The circumstances are different. Your son's case is exceptional, and wasn't Agnes Liman's." The question hung in the air unanswered. In the days that followed, Raphael became a constant presence not only at Theo's bedside, but also in Helena's room. He brought books, games, and small gifts. Rose observed this attention with a mixture of gratitude and caution. "You don't need to do all that," she said after Raphael brought Helena a tablet with educational games. "Please call me Raphael," he replied. "And yes, I need to. I need it more than you can imagine." The children's recovery progressed without complications. The transplanted liver functioned perfectly in Theo's body, and Helena's organ regenerated with the resilience typical of this extraordinary tissue. Doctors predicted they would be discharged within a week. It was in this optimistic atmosphere that Raphael decided to talk to Helena. He chose a moment when Rose had gone out to get some clothes from the apartment. "Helena," he began, sitting down beside the girl's bed, "you saved my son's life. There are no words to express what I feel." Helena smiled. "Is Theo better, really?" "Yes, thanks to you, and I want to do something in return. I want to help you and your grandmother." "We don't need help," Helena replied with the typical frankness of children. "Grandma Rose says we'll manage just fine." Raphael smiled, touched by the dignity of that response. "I understand, but still I'd like to offer something. Perhaps a fund for your education, or a better apartment." Helena frowned thoughtfully. "Mom always said that the best way to show gratitude is to help other people." Raphael felt the impact of those simple words. "What do you mean?" "If you want to thank me, you could help other people like Mom and Theo, people who need new livers." The businessman looked at the child with a mixture of astonishment and admiration. There was a wisdom in Helena that transcended her age, a wisdom born perhaps of early pain and loss. "You know, Helena," he said finally, "I think you've just given me a wonderful idea." That night, alone in his luxurious penthouse overlooking the city's Central Park, Raphael Muller made a decision that would change not only his life, but potentially the lives of thousands. He decided to create a foundation dedicated to reforming the transplant system, encouraging organ donation and funding surgeries for patients who, like Agnes Lehman, fell through the system's loopholes. And he already knew what the foundation's name would be. Agnes Lehman Institute knew. Beginnings. What Raphael couldn't foresee was that his decision would trigger a series of events that would bring to light long buried secrets within the Central Hospital, secrets that some people would do anything to keep hidden. News of the founding of the Agnes Lehman Institute, New Beginnings, spread rapidly through the media. Raphael Muller, known for his discretion and reserve, surprised everyone by publicly announcing the venture, detailing his personal inspiration and the project's objectives. Sitting next to his recovering son at home, he gave an exclusive interview to the capital's main newspaper. "What my son went through changed my perspective on many things," she declared. "I realized that our transplant system has flaws that privilege some at the expense of others. The Agnes Lehman Institute will work to change that." When questioned about the choice of name, Raphael responded with an honesty that impressed even the most cynical journalists. Agnes Lehman was a woman the system failed. Her daughter, Helena, demonstrated a compassion that saved my son. Naming the foundation in her mother's honor is the least I can do. At the Central Hospital, the news was met with mixed reactions. Some members of the medical staff celebrated the initiative, seeing it as an opportunity to improve the healthcare system. Others, particularly those involved in the former transplant committee, showed discreet nervousness. Dr. Olivia Alliance was among the most uneasy. During a board meeting to discuss the hospital's cooperation with the new foundation, she expressed technical concerns about reviewing old cases. "I'm not questioning the nobility of the initiative," he argued, maintaining a professional tone, "but reviewing past committee decisions could set dangerous precedents and create false expectations for patients and their families." Raphael watched her intently as she spoke. There was something about Olivia's insistence that intrigued him. As chief physician, she had always been a staunch defender of protocols, but her resistance to the project seemed disproportionate. "The review is not punitive in nature, Dr. Alliance," he replied calmly. "The goal is to identify patterns and systemic flaws to improve our future criteria. No one is being blamed for following the protocols of the time." The tension between the two was palpable, even though it was kept under a veneer of professional cordiality. Meanwhile, Helena and Theo continued their recovery, now in their respective homes. Raphael had insisted on providing home medical care for Helena and Rose, sending nurses and equipment to their small apartment. Rose initially resisted, but eventually accepted the support upon realizing the benefits for her granddaughter's recovery. The two children kept in touch through daily video calls, developing a friendship that transcended the extraordinary physical connection they shared. Theo, previously an introverted child isolated by his illness, flourished with Helena's energy and optimism. She, in turn, was enchanted by her new friend's knowledge and curiosity. "Did you know that our livers are growing back?" Theo explained during one of their conversations, showing him an anatomy book his father had given him. "Mine is growing with the piece you gave me, and yours is regenerating on its own." "Like a starfish?" asked Helena, fascinated. "Almost. It's one of the only organs that can do that." "Cool, right?" Helena smiled, instinctively touching the scar on her abdomen. "It means a part of me will forever remain inside you." "We're like brothers now," Theo concluded seriously. "Brothers by blood." The expression made Helena laugh, a clear sound that filled the hospital room, where Theo was still recovering with joy. From the hallway, Raphael watched the interaction with a melancholic smile. The innocence of that bond contrasted painfully with the ethical and moral dilemmas he now faced. That afternoon, after the video call, Raphael took Helena and Rose for a walk in the park. It was the girl's first outing since her surgery, and she was thrilled at the prospect of feeling the sun and seeing the trees again. During the walk, while Helena fed the ducks from a distance, Raphael finally had the opportunity to talk to Rose alone. What was she like? "Agnes, I mean," he asked hesitantly. Rose looked at her granddaughter before answering, as if searching for traces of her daughter in the child's face. Agnes was like Helena, in many ways. Determined, generous even to a fault at times. She had a gift for seeing the best in people, even when they didn't deserve it. She paused. When she received the diagnosis, her first concern was how Helena would grow up without her, not her own suffering. Raphael felt a lump in his throat. "And Helena's father?" "He was never present. A brief relationship. During a trip Agnes took to the countryside. He never knew about the pregnancy, and she never wanted to look for him. She said that the two of them, she and Helena, were a complete family." "Rose," Raphael began, choosing his words carefully, "I need to tell you something. About Agnes and the transplant committee." The elderly woman turned to face him, a shadow of understanding already passing through her tired eyes. "You were on the committee that denied her the transplant, weren't you? Helena told me you were the head of the hospital." The frankness of the question caught him off guard. "Yes," he admitted. "I chaired the committee that evaluated her case, and I signed the denial." Rose nodded slowly, without showing the anger or accusation that Raphael expected. "Agnes never blamed anyone," he finally said. "She always said that the system was bigger than individuals, that no one was to blame for following established rules, even if they were unfair. Even so, I feel I owe an apology to you and Helena." Rose looked again at her granddaughter, who was now chasing a butterfly, her laughter echoing through the park. "Look at her. Mr. Muller. Helena is alive, she's happy, and she's just done something extraordinary. There's nothing to apologize for. What's done is done. But still, if you really want to do something," Rose interrupted with surprising firmness, "continue with this foundation. Change the system that failed Agnes. That will be more valuable than any apology." The conversation was interrupted when Helena ran back, breathless and smiling. "Grandma, Mr. Muller, there's a family of newborn ducklings. Come and see." On the way back to the hospital, Raphael drove in silence, lost in thought. The absence of resentment in Rose disconcerted him. There was a dignity in her acceptance that made him question his own motivations. Was he creating the foundation out of genuine conviction, or merely to appease his guilt? Upon arriving at the Central Hospital, a surprise awaited him. Fiona Sallin, a reporter known for her investigative stories, was at the main entrance, clearly waiting for him. Raphael briefly considered entering through another entrance, but decided to face whatever came his way. "Mr. Muller," the journalist approached him as soon as she saw him, "I would like to ask you some questions about the Agnes Lyman Institute, specifically about your personal connection to the Agnes Lyman case." Raphael maintained a neutral expression, aware of the cameras. All relevant information was released in the official statement. "Ms. Sallin, the foundation was inspired by the generosity of Helena, Agnes's daughter, but you omitted a crucial detail, didn't you?" Fiona insisted. "The fact that you were the one who denied the transplant to Agnes Lehman." A small group of employees and patients began to form, drawn together by the confrontation. "As chairman of the commission at the time, I signed many decisions based on the protocols then in force," Raphael replied cautiously. "It is precisely because I recognize the flaws in those protocols that I am creating the foundation." "So you admit there was wrongdoing in the Agnes Lehman case?" Raphael paused, aware that his answer could have significant legal implications. "I admit that the system can and should be improved. If you'll excuse me, I have a hospital to manage." As he walked away, he could hear Fiona asking another question. "And how do you explain that Agnes Lehman's blood type was incorrectly recorded in the system, making any possibility of a compatible donation impossible?" Raphael stopped abruptly. This was information he was unaware of. He turned slowly. "What?" The reporter's expression made it clear that she had gotten exactly the reaction she was hoping for. "According to our investigation, Agnes Lehman's medical record contained a discrepancy in her blood type. The error was documented but never corrected, making it impossible for her to be considered for compatible donations that became available later." Raphael felt his blood run cold. Administrative errors had occurred, but the implications of this revelation were disturbing. "If you'll excuse me, Ms. Sallin, I need to verify this information personally. No further comments until then." Hurrying to his office, Raphael immediately requested full access to Agnes Lehman's digital medical record, including all change logs. As the hospital's owner, he was authorized to access any record, although he rarely exercised this privilege. What they found confirmed the reporter's claim. Agnes's blood type had been altered in the system 2 days after her initial admission. From O to AB+, a change that would make her incompatible with most potential donors. Even more disturbing, the log indicated that the change had been made using their own administrative credentials. Raphael leaned back in his chair, stunned. He hadn't made that change. Of that he was absolutely certain. Someone had used his access to deliberately alter Agnes's record. The question was who, and why. That same night, while Raphael was still processing the discovery, Dr. Olivia discreetly arranged for Helena's transfer to another floor of the hospital, claiming a need for specialized monitoring. The doctor had noticed the growing attention the girl was receiving and the media's interest in her story. "It's for her own good," she explained to the head nurse. "All this exposure can be harmful to a child in recovery." What Olivia didn't mention was the conversation she'd had hours earlier with Chiara Limen, an elegant woman with a stern expression who had arrived at the hospital demanding to see her niece. "Helena is my sister's daughter," Chiara declared, "and I want to know exactly what's going on." As Central Hospital slowly descended into darkness, 3 people in different parts of the building remained awake, each with their own concerns and agendas. Raphael in his office, obsessively investigating the altered records. Olivia in her room, carefully drafting a report on the psychological risks of the situation for Helena. And Chiara Lyman in the hospital lobby, patiently awaiting the right moment to make her next move. The stage was set for a confrontation that no one could have predicted. The sun had not yet risen when Chiara Lyman left the hotel where she was staying. Impeccably dressed in a grey suit, she carried a leather briefcase with carefully organized documents. Her car awaited her at the entrance, not a taxi but a sedan with a private driver, indicative of her social standing. "To Dr. Alan Sallin's office, please," he instructed the driver. His tone was controlled, but the tension was evident in the way his fingers drummed against the briefcase. Chiara hadn't visited the capital in almost 4 years since Agnes's funeral. At the time, she had attended out of obligation, maintaining emotional distance throughout the ceremony. The relationship between the sisters had deteriorated years earlier, after a family dispute that both refused to resolve. Now seeing her sister's name in newspaper headlines, associated with a billionaire and a foundation, complex feelings resurfaced. At the lawyer's office, Chiara was received with the deference reserved for important clients. Dr. Allen, coincidentally, the brother of reporter Fiona Sallin, was known for his aggressiveness in family law cases. "Ms. Lehman, I have prepared the documents as requested," he said, indicating a stack of papers on the table. The emergency guardianship petition is ready to be submitted to the judge. Kiara nodded, quickly flipping through the documents. And what about the allegations of manipulation and abuse, structured based on the information you provided? The narrative is compelling. A vulnerable orphan child, manipulated into undergoing a dangerous surgical procedure, all to benefit the son of an influential billionaire. Alan paused. However, I must warn you that the case is not simple. The procedure was approved by the hospital's ethics committee and had the consent of the legal guardian. Rose is an elderly lady and easily influenced, Kiara replied curtly. And what about the fact that Mueller hid his role in the transplant rejection from Agnes? This strengthens our argument about conflict of interest and manipulation. It suggests a pattern of ethically questionable behavior. Kiara seemed pleased. Great. I want the hearing scheduled as soon as possible. If I may ask, Alan said carefully, what is your real interest in Helena's custody? From what I understand, you two have never lived together. Kiara straightened up in her chair, her face hardening. My reasons are personal, Dr. Sallin. Let's just say I have a debt to my sister that I need to repay. While Kiara prepared her legal battle at the Central Hospital, Helena was being discharged. The girl was radiant at the prospect of returning home, although a part of her missed the daily visits to Theo, who still needed a few more days of hospitalization. Can we come visit him every day, Grandma? She asked, as Rose packed her few belongings. Of course, my love. I'm sure Mr. Muller won't mind. Nurse Viola, who had grown particularly fond of Helena, entered the room with a small package. A gift for my favorite patient, she said, handing the girl a colorful box. Helena opened the gift with excitement, revealing a toy stethoscope. Wow, now I can hear the hearts of people like you. And who knows, maybe one day you'll become a real doctor, Viola smiled. The scene was interrupted by the arrival of Raphael, accompanied by Theo in a wheelchair. The boy seemed significantly stronger than the last time Helena had seen him in person. And we've come to say goodbye, Raphael announced, or rather to say see you later, since I hope you'll visit us often. Helena ran to hug Theo, who returned the hug with equal enthusiasm. Look what I got, she said, showing him the stethoscope. Want to try it? While the children were playing, Raphael approached Rose, speaking in a low voice. There have been some developments that we need to discuss. Not here, not now, but soon. Rose immediately noticed the tension in his voice. Something wrong? Potentially. I'd prefer to explain when we're in a more private location. I'll send a car to pick you up this afternoon if you agree. The hospital discharge was surprisingly chaotic. Several reporters were waiting in the lobby, alerted by some inside source about Helena's discharge. Raphael, accustomed to dealing with the media, strategically positioned himself to protect the children from excessive exposure. I ask for respect for the privacy of these children, she stated firmly. Helena has just undergone serious surgery and deserves peace during her recovery. Most journalists respected the request, keeping their distance, but Fiona Sallin approached, holding an envelope. Mr. Muller, I would like a comment on this court order, she said, handing him the envelope. Kiara Lyman, Helena's aunt, is requesting temporary custody of the girl, alleging manipulation and exposure to unnecessary risks. Raphael accepted the envelope with an impassive expression, though his face paled slightly. Rose beside him gasped in shock. No comment at the moment, Raphael replied, quickly guiding the group to the exit where a car was waiting for them. Once inside the vehicle, while the children chatted animatedly in the back seat, Rose turned to Raphael with a distressed look. Kiara, after all these years, she never cared about Helena, never even bothered to find out how she was doing. Calm. Down, Raphael pleaded, though he himself was deeply troubled. We'll face this together. I have the best lawyers in the city at my disposal. Rose shook her head, silent tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. Agnes always said that Kiara carried sorrows like other people carry jewels. Like ornaments she refused to abandon. Upon arriving at Rose's modest apartment, they found another court officer waiting with a formal summons. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following morning, and Rose was expressly forbidden from leaving town with Helena. That night, was tense in the small apartment. Helena, though too young to fully understand the situation, sensed that something was wrong. Rose tried to maintain composure, preparing her granddaughter's favorite pasta and feigning a calmness that was far from present. "Grandma, who is Aunt Chiara?" Helena asked during dinner. "I heard that girl on the news talking about her." Rose hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Chiara is your mother's sister. They weren't very close in recent years." "Why does she want to take me? I don't like being here with you." Rose hugged her granddaughter, unable to hold back her tears. "Of course she likes me, my love, and nobody will take her away from me. Nobody." On the other side of town, in Raphael's luxurious penthouse, an emergency meeting was taking place. The businessman had summoned his most experienced lawyers to discuss the defense strategy. "The accusation is serious," explained Victor, the team's lead lawyer. "Chiara Lehman alleges that you exploited Helena and Rose's vulnerability for your own benefit, putting the girl at unnecessary risk to save your own child." "That's absurd," exclaimed Raphael, pacing nervously around the room. The decision went through a full ethics committee. Rose gave her consent after being thoroughly informed of the risks. "The problem," Victor continued, "is that his position as the hospital's owner creates an appearance of coercion, even if indirect. And there's the aggravating factor of the discovery about Agnes's case." Raphael stopped walking, staring at the lawyer. "How did they know about this? Fiona Sallin even mentioned the change in blood type, information I only found out about yesterday." Victor shook his head. "Someone inside the hospital is leaking information, someone with privileged access to the records who has an interest in harming him." The businessman immediately thought of Olivia, but kept his suspicion to himself. He needed proof before making accusations. "There's another complication," Victor added, consulting his notes. "Chiara is requesting a psychological evaluation of Helena, alleging possible trauma related to the procedure and psychological manipulation." Raphael slumped heavily onto the sofa. Who would perform this exam? The court would appoint an independent expert, but the hospital could suggest names. "Olivia will certainly try to influence that choice," Raphael murmured, more to himself than to the others. The meeting continued until the early hours of the morning, with the legal team outlining strategies and counter-arguments. Meanwhile, Theo slept in the next room, oblivious to the storm brewing around the people he loved. The following morning, the capital's courthouse was buzzing with news of the hearing. The case had leaked to the press, and the story of the donor girl versus the manipulating billionaire was already making sensational headlines. Rose arrived accompanied by Raphael and his legal team. Helena was left in Viola's care, who had offered to spend the morning with the girl, keeping her distracted with games and activities. In the courthouse corridor, Rose caught sight of Chiara for the first time in 4 years. The woman looked stunning, in a conservative navy blue dress, her hair impeccably styled, her expression one of wounded dignity, carefully rehearsed. The two women stared at each other briefly, decades of silent family history passing between them like an invisible electric current. "Aren't you ashamed?" Rose whispered as Chiara walked past her. "Using Helena as an instrument of revenge?" Chiara stopped, turning slowly. "Revenge? I'm protecting my niece from people who used her as a human spare part, something you apparently were incapable of doing." Before Rose could respond, the lawyers intervened, separating the two women. The courtroom was surprisingly full for a preliminary injunction case. Journalists occupied most of the available seats, eager to capture every detail of the unfolding drama. Judge Pietro Ollins, known for his rigor and impartiality, presided over the session. After the initial formalities, he set the tone. "This court is not interested in media spectacles or personal vendettas. Our only concern is the well-being of the minor Helena Lyman. Let us proceed with this in mind." Chiara's lawyer was the first to present his arguments, painting a calculated picture of exploitation and manipulation. He highlighted the disturbing coincidence of Helena donating part of her liver to the son of the man who had denied the transplant to his mother. "And even more serious, Your Honor," continued Dr. Allen, "we have discovered evidence that Agnes Lyman's medical record was deliberately falsified to make her ineligible for transplantation, using Mr. Muller's own credentials." A murmur ran through the room. The judge banged his gavel, demanding silence. "These are extremely serious accusations, Dr. Sallin. Do you have concrete evidence?" "Yes, Your Honor. We presented the hospital system logs as evidence, showing the change in blood type and the responsible user." Raphael leaned in to whisper to Victor. They both knew this was just the beginning of a battle that promised to expose long-buried secrets at the central hospital, secrets that could destroy reputations and, more importantly, profoundly affect the future of two innocent children whose destinies had become extraordinarily intertwined. The preliminary hearing proceeded like a rising storm. Following the forceful accusations made by Chiara's lawyer, Victor stood up to defend Raphael and Rose. His approach was cautious and technical, emphasizing the ethical scrutiny the donation procedure had undergone. "Your Honor," he began in a calm, firm voice, "the transplant was approved by an independent ethics committee composed of experts from various institutions. Helena's legal guardian, Ms. Rose, received complete information about the risks and benefits, and her consent was given free of any coercion." Judge Pietro listened attentively, occasionally making notes. His expression remained neutral, impossible to decipher. "Regarding the allegations about falsifying medical records," Victor continued, "my client was as surprised as we all were. In fact, it was Mr. Muller himself who initiated an internal investigation to find out what really happened." Chiara exchanged a skeptical glance with her lawyer. In the front row of the audience, Fiona Sallin watched everything, furiously taking notes in her notebook. "And what about the psychological well-being of the minor?" the judge inquired. "We have here a preliminary report signed by Dr. Olivia Allianz, chief physician of the Central Hospital, expressing concern about Helena's emotional state." Raphael felt a chill run down his spine. He hadn't known about this report. He looked at Victor, who seemed equally surprised. "Your Honor, this is the first time we have become aware of this document," Victor admitted. The judge frowned. "The report was added to the case file last night by the hospital's medical team." Dr. Allianz notes, and I quote, "The minor Helena has demonstrated potentially concerning behavior, including excessive attachment to patient Theo Muller and a tendency to make impulsive decisions based on idealized memories of her deceased mother." Rose let out an indignant sound, quickly silenced by a warning look from Victor. "Considering the seriousness of the allegations and this medical report," concluded Judge Pietro, "I order a full psychological evaluation of Helena Lyman to be conducted by an independent expert appointed by the court. Until the conclusion of this evaluation and the investigation into the possible falsification of medical records, I grant temporary shared custody between Rose and Chiara Lyman, with the girl remaining in her current residence, but with supervised visits from her aunt." The gavel fell, ending the session. Raphael felt both relieved and worried. The situation could have been much worse. Helena wouldn't have been separated from Rose, but the accusations continued to hang like a dark cloud. As they left the courtroom, they were surrounded by reporters. Raphael and Rose were quickly escorted out by security guards, while Chiara gave a brief interview, positioning herself as the protective guardian concerned with her niece's well-being. "My only concern is Helena," she declared with apparent sincerity. "A vulnerable child who lost her mother and was exposed to a dangerous and unnecessary surgical procedure. I respect the judge's decision and will await the psychological evaluation, confident that it will confirm my concerns." In the car on the way to Rose's apartment, Raphael finally expressed his frustration. "Olivia betrayed us. That report is completely fabricated. Helena is one of the most balanced children I've ever known, considering everything she's been through." Rose looked exhausted, her hands trembling in her lap. "Why would Dr. Allianz do this? I thought she was a friend of Agnes's." "A friend?" Raphael turned around, surprised. "They knew each other personally?" "Yes, they studied together in college. It was Olivia who originally diagnosed Agnes's condition and referred her to the transplant program." Rose paused, remembering. "But something happened between them. Agnes never wanted to talk about it." This information hit Raphael like a revelation. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Olivia's resistance to the foundation, her strange behavior when Agnes's name was mentioned. And now this damaging report, I need to investigate this further, he murmured, more to himself than to Rose. When they arrived at the apartment, they found Helena and Viola drawing at the small table in the living room. The girl ran to hug her grandmother as soon as she saw her. "Grandma!" "I drew our family. Look, here's you, me, Theo, and Uncle Raphael." Rose hugged her granddaughter, exchanging a meaningful look with Raphael. Helena's idea of family had already naturally expanded to include them. "It's beautiful, my love," Rose replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "And guess what? Your Aunt Chiara is coming to visit us soon. You don't remember her, but she's your mother's sister." Helena frowned, confused. "Why hasn't she come before?" She lives far away," Rose improvised. "But now she wants to get to know you better." After saying goodbye to Viola, Raphael gently explained the situation to Helena using age-appropriate language. He mentioned that some people were concerned about her surgery and wanted to make sure she was okay, both physically and emotionally. "A lady will talk to you about how you're feeling," she explained. "It's important that you be honest, as you always are." Helena nodded earnestly. "Can I say that I want to keep seeing Theo? He's like a brother to me now." Raphael smiled, moved by the simplicity and depth of that definition. "Of course you can, darling. Just say exactly how you feel." After Helena went to sleep, Raphael and Rose discussed their next steps. The businessman was determined to find out who had altered Agnes's medical records using her credentials. "I need to go back to the hospital and examine the system logs more thoroughly. The change was made using my login, but there are certainly digital traces that can identify the real culprit." "Do you think it was Olivia?" Rose asked quietly. "I don't want to make hasty accusations, but her behavior and this new information about her relationship with Agnes certainly put her at the top of my list of suspects." The following morning, Raphael went to the central hospital with a clear purpose. As the owner, he had the authority to request a full audit of the systems, but he preferred a more discreet approach. He turned to Pietro, the head of IT security, a brilliant young man whom he had personally hired years before. "I need something delicate, Pietro," she explained in her private office. "A forensic analysis of the access to Agnes Lyman's medical records, especially the alteration of her blood type that was made using my credentials." The technician nodded, understanding the seriousness of the situation. "I'll need a few hours, Mr. Muller. The 2017 system was different from the current one, but all the logs were preserved during the migration." "Be discreet," Raphael warned. "I don't want anyone to know about this investigation, especially Dr. Allianz." While Pietro was working, Raphael tried to maintain his normal routine, attending administrative meetings and visiting patients. Theo had been discharged that morning and was resting at home under the care of a private nurse. Late in the afternoon, Pietro called him discreetly. His face was tense, like someone who had discovered something disturbing. "Sir, I found something strange," he said, showing a computer screen with a series of codes and timestamps. "The change was made using your credentials, but from a specific terminal at an unusual time, 3:22 in the morning." "I would never be at the hospital at that time," Raphael confirmed. "Exactly. And what's most interesting, this terminal was located in the old underground laboratory, which at the time was used only for specific research authorized by Dr. Allianz." Raphael felt his heart race. "Can you identify who was in the hospital that night?" "The access logs from that period are more limited, but I found something." Pietro showed another screen. "The access card used to enter the lab that night belonged to Anna Carmen." "Anna Carmen," Raphael repeated, trying to make the connection. "Did she work at the hospital?" "Yes, she was a senior administrative assistant with privileged access to various systems. She left the hospital abruptly about 6 months after this incident." Raphael thanked Pietro, again advising him to maintain absolute discretion. He needed to find Anna Carmen and discover why she had sabotaged Agnes's medical records. Meanwhile, at Rose's apartment, Helena was undergoing the court-ordered psychological evaluation. The appointed psychologist, Dr. Fiona, no relation to the journalist, was a middle-aged woman with a gentle expression and a warm approach. She used playful techniques to establish rapport with Helena, including drawings and make-believe games. "Helena, can you tell me how you decided to donate part of your liver to Theo?" asked the psychologist while the girl colored a drawing. Helena didn't hesitate. I saw that he was very sick, just like my mother was. Mom always said that we should help when we can. And I could help Theo. Did someone suggest you do this? Mr. Muller, perhaps? The girl shook her head negatively. No, it was my idea. At first, Grandma Rose didn't want to allow it. She was scared. But I insisted a lot. And how do you feel now? Any pain, any regrets? Helena thought for a moment. Sometimes it hurts a little here, she said, pointing to the scar. But I'm happy because Theo is better. He's my friend now. My brother from another mother. The assessment continued for another hour, with the psychologist gently exploring different aspects of Helena's experience. At the end, she spoke briefly with Rose, while Helena played in her room. She seems surprisingly well adjusted, considering everything she's been through, commented Dr. Fiona. I see no signs of coercion or manipulation. The decision to donate seems to have come genuinely from her, motivated by her mother's example and her own natural compassion. Rose felt immense relief. So your report, it will be beneficial, yes. I see no reason for Helena to be removed from her current environment. She demonstrates a healthy attachment to the lady and a natural friendship with Theo, not a worrying dependence as suggested in the hospital report. That night, as the city quieted down, Raphael worked tirelessly in his penthouse office. With the help of private investigators, he was tracking Anna Carmen's current whereabouts. Preliminary information indicated that she had left the country shortly after being discharged from the hospital, settling in Switzerland. His phone rang. It was Pietro again. Mr. Muller, I've discovered something else that might interest you. In the same week as the alteration in the medical record, Anna Carmen received a substantial transfer into an offshore account. The source is difficult to trace, but there are connections to a pharmaceutical company, Lehman Pharmaceuticals. Raphael almost dropped the phone. Lehman? Like Agnes and Chiara Lehman? Exactly. The company originally belonged to their father, but it was sold years before. It kept the name, but the new owners completely changed the company's profile. The implications were profound and disturbing. If Anna Carmen had been paid to sabotage Agnes's medical records, and the money came from a company that had once belonged to the Lehman family, the connections could lead in unexpected directions. Meanwhile, at a luxurious hotel in the capital, Chiara Lehman was having dinner with Dr. Olivia Allianz. The two women were having a tense conversation in hushed voices. Your report was impeccable, Chiara commented, sipping expensive champagne. But the official psychological evaluation might contradict it. Unlikely, Olivia replied with studied confidence. I've planted enough seeds of concern to warrant a more thorough investigation. The important thing is to keep Helena away from Muller long enough for the investigation into the medical records to be completed. What if they find out about Anna? Olivia gave a cold smile. Anna is far away, living comfortably on the money she received. And even if they find her, it would be her word against mine and against yours. Chiara leaned forward. Don't threaten me, Olivia. Remember that I have as much to lose as you do. It's not a threat, darling. Just a reminder that we're all in the same boat. Olivia paused, studying the other woman. What do you really want with Helena? You never cared about Agnes, much less her daughter. Chiara's face hardened momentarily before she resumed her composed demeanor. My reasons are personal. Revenge against Muller. Let's just say I have a debt to the past that needs to be paid. Chiara finished her glass of champagne. Besides, the prospect of controlling the educational fund that Muller will surely establish for Helena is appealing. What neither of them noticed was Fiona Sallen's presence at a distant table, observing their interaction with keen journalistic interest. The reporter couldn't hear the conversation, but the mere fact that Chiara Lehman and Olivia Allianz were having dinner together in secret was already valuable information. The plot thickened, and Helena's future hung in an increasingly precarious balance. As secrets emerged from the shadows, the true motivations of each player in this drama began to reveal themselves, complex and often contradictory like the human heart. The capital city awoke to a light drizzle that Wednesday morning. Raphael Muller surveyed the city from his penthouse, his cup of coffee cooling in his hands. He hadn't slept. The revelations of the previous night about Anna Carmen and the mysterious connection to Lehman Pharmaceuticals had kept him awake, chasing digital clues and making international calls. His cell phone vibrated. It was Pietro again. "Mr. Muller, I've managed to get a contact in Switzerland. Anna Carmen currently works for a private clinic in Geneva." "Excellent work," Raphael replied. "I need to speak with her immediately." "I've already arranged it." She agreed to a secure video call at 2 p.m. local time. Raphael felt a surge of adrenaline. He could finally get direct answers. However, he knew he needed to be cautious. If Anna had been bribed once, she could easily be bought again to remain silent. "Pietro, I want you to discreetly record this conversation. Not for blackmail, but as evidence if necessary." As he hung up, Raphael noticed Theo standing in the doorway of the office, still in his pajamas, his hair disheveled from sleep. "Dad, you didn't sleep again," said the boy, his voice revealing concern beyond his years. Raphael smiled, extending his arms. Theo ran to hug him. "I'm just working on something important, son. How are you feeling today?" "Much better." "Can I visit Helena? I miss her." The simple and sincere request tugged at Raphael's heart. "Not yet, champ. Helena is undergoing some medical procedures, but soon, I promise." In truth, Raphael hesitated to involve Theo in the current situation. Chiara's accusations, the ongoing investigation, and the custody battle for Helena were all too complex for a child who had just regained his health. Meanwhile, in Rose's small apartment, Helena was also waking up. The morning routine continued almost normally: breakfast, cartoons, light exercises recommended by doctors for her recovery. The only difference was the announced presence of Chiara, who would be coming for the first supervised visit authorized by the court. "Grandma, what's Aunt Chiara like?" Helena asked while Rose braided her hair. Rose hesitated, searching for the right words. "She's elegant, very intelligent. She's a bit like her mother, but in a different way." "Different how?" "Well, her mother was warm, always smiling. Chiara is more reserved." Helena absorbed the information in silence. After a moment, she asked, "Will she like me?" Rose felt a pang in her chest. "Who wouldn't want that, my love? You're the most special girl in the world." At precisely 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. Rose took a deep breath, mentally preparing herself for the meeting. Beside her, Helena nervously smoothed the blue dress she had chosen especially for the occasion. Chiara Lehman entered the apartment like a cool breeze, impeccably dressed in a cream ensemble, her brown hair pulled back in an elegant bun. Her eyes, so similar to Agnes's, quickly scanned the modest room before landing on Helena. There was a moment of almost palpable tension when aunt and niece first looked at each other. The resemblance between Helena and Agnes was striking. The same expressive eyes, the same face shape. Chiara seemed momentarily unsettled by the sight. "Hello, Helena," she finally said, her voice composed. "I'm your Aunt Chiara." Helena, normally outgoing, displayed an unusual shyness. "Hello, Aunt." A rigidly choreographed visit followed. Chiara had brought gifts, an expensive porcelain doll and books in English and French. Helena thanked her politely, although it was obvious that the gifts did not correspond to the interests of a child her age. The court-appointed social worker discreetly observed the interaction, making occasional notes. Rose stayed close, as tense as a violin string. "Helena, did your mother talk about me?" Chiara asked during a moment when they were leafing through one of the books together. The girl thought for a moment. "She had a picture of you. She said you two used to play together when you were little at Grandpa's house." Something flashed across Chiara's face, a shadow of genuine emotion. "Yes, we used to play in the backyard. She always wanted to be the princess and I had to be the dragon." "Mom liked princesses," Helena agreed, smiling for the first time. "She used to tell me stories about a brave princess who saved the kingdom." A silence followed, laden with possibilities, a potential moment of authentic connection. But Chiara quickly resumed her formal posture, as if she feared the vulnerability the memory had provoked. "Well, I hope you like the gifts. Next time, maybe we can spend the day together, go for a walk." Helena nodded politely, but her enthusiasm had waned. When Chiara finally said goodbye, the girl seemed relieved. "She doesn't like me very much, does she, Grandma?" he asked after the door closed. Rose sighed, hugging her granddaughter. "That's not it, darling. Chiara doesn't quite know how to be an aunt yet. She doesn't have children, she's not used to kids. I think she's sad," Helena concluded with the surprising insight she often displayed. Her eyes are like her mother's, but they don't smile. At 2 p.m. sharp, Raphael sat down in his private office at the hospital, ready for the video call with Anna Carmen. Pietro had set everything up, ensuring a secure connection. The screen flickered and the face of a woman of approximately 40 years old appeared. Anna Carmen looked nervous, constantly adjusting her thick-rimmed glasses, her eyes avoiding direct eye contact. "Mr. Muller," he greeted formally. "I confess your call caught me by surprise. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Miss Carmen, I'll get straight to the point. I discovered that my login was used to change the blood type of a patient named Agnes Lehman in 2017. The system logs show that the access was made from a terminal that you used regularly." Anna visibly paled. There was a long silence before she answered. I don't know what you're talking about." "Anna," Raphael continued, keeping his voice calm, "I'm not here to accuse or threaten you. I want to understand what happened. Why was the record altered? Who asked you to do that and why?" The woman looked away, visibly agitated. "I can't talk about it. I signed confidentiality agreements with Lyman Pharmaceuticals." The shock on Anna's face was unmistakable. "How could you? We know about the bank transfer." "Anna, what we don't know is why a pharmaceutical company would pay to sabotage a patient's medical record." Anna took a deep breath, seemingly making a difficult decision. Agnes Lyman was suing Lyman Pharmaceuticals, undisclosed side effects from an experimental drug she took as part of a clinical trial years earlier. Her liver problem was a direct consequence of that drug. Raphael felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. And they paid to ensure she didn't receive a transplant? It wasn't meant for her. Anna hesitated, visibly struggling with her conscience. The plan wasn't to kill her, just to prevent her from testifying. The case was progressing. She had substantial evidence. If she died while the case was ongoing, it would be too suspicious. So they falsified her blood type so that she wouldn't be considered for compatible donations. Anna nodded, tears beginning to well up in her eyes. "I didn't know that she wouldn't survive. They told me it was just to delay the transplant until the case was resolved." "Who contacted you?" "Who from Lyman Pharmaceuticals?" "It wasn't directly the pharmaceutical company," Anna replied, her voice now almost a whisper. "It was someone from the hospital. Someone who had connections with the company." "Who?" Raphael insisted, although he already suspected the answer. "Dr. Olivia Allianz." Anna took a deep breath before continuing. She was a consultant for Lyman Pharmaceuticals at the time. She was involved in the development of the drug that affected Agnes. The pieces of the puzzle finally fell into place. Olivia had used her position at the hospital to protect the pharmacist, sacrificing Agnes in the process. And why did they use my credentials? Dr. Allianz said it would be a guarantee. If something went wrong, the blame would fall on you. Raphael closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the betrayal. "Anna, would you be willing to repeat all of this officially, in a sworn statement?" The woman hesitated. "I could lose everything. My license, my current job. People have already lost much more. Agnes lost her life. Helena lost her mother. And now she risks losing the grandmother who raised her." These words seemed to strike Anna deeply. After a long silence, she nodded. "I will send a written statement later today, and I am willing to testify by video conference if necessary." After hanging up, Raphael remained motionless for several minutes, processing what he had discovered. The depth of the conspiracy was shocking. Olivia had deliberately sabotaged a patient's treatment to protect corporate interests, and now she was trying to remove Helena from the hospital to prevent old connections from being revealed. But there was still one piece missing. What was Chiara Limen's role in all of this? Could she possibly have known about Olivia's involvement in her sister's death? Raphael picked up the phone and dialed Victor. "I need you to investigate the financial and personal connections between Chiara Limen and Olivia Allianz, and also any relationship between Chiara and Lyman Pharmaceuticals after the sale of the company by the family." Meanwhile, in the lobby of the Central Hospital, Fiona Sallin waited discreetly, pretending to read a magazine. Her anonymous source inside the hospital had promised bombshell information about the Helena Theo case. A nurse walked quickly past her, accidentally dropping a small USB drive beside her seat. Fiona picked it up with studied movements, without looking directly at the nurse who was already walking away. 20 minutes later, in a nearby cafe, the journalist connected the device to her laptop. The content was explosive. Emails between Olivia Allianz and executives at Lyman Pharmaceuticals discussing Agnes's case, records of consulting payments and, most incriminatingly, an exchange of messages about solving the AL problem, Agnes Lyman. Presumably. Fiona could hardly believe what she was seeing. The story that initially seemed to be about a billionaire manipulating a vulnerable child had transformed into something much bigger, a corporate conspiracy that had resulted in the loss of a life and now threatened to tear a little girl away from the only family she knew. Her journalistic instinct told her to publish immediately, but an inner voice advised caution. This evidence had been obtained illegally. Furthermore, premature publication could harm the legal case that would surely form, and by extension, harm Helena. While she was considering her options, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. Ms. Sallin? The male voice on the other end sounded vaguely familiar. This is Raphael Muller. I know we've had our differences, but I believe we share a common interest, the truth about what happened to Agnes Lyman. Fiona felt a shiver of anticipation. I'm listening. I have information that might interest you, but I need your discretion, at least for now. Not for my reputation, but for Helena's safety. The journalist glanced at her laptop where the incriminating emails were still open. Coincidentally, Mr. Muller, I also have information that might interest you. They arranged to meet that evening at a neutral location, the city's public library, which was almost empty at that hour. Helena's day passed calmly after Chiara's tense visit. Rose tried to maintain an atmosphere of normalcy, but the girl sensed her grandmother's worry. "Grandma, you don't need to be sad," she said as they ate dinner. "Aunt Chiara isn't taking me. I don't want to go with her." Rose smiled sadly. "Sometimes it's not that simple, my love. There are laws, judges, decisions. But the judge will see that I'm happy here with you, won't he?" Helena placed her small hand on her grandmother's. "And Uncle Raphael will help us," he promised. The girl's simple faith in justice and in the promises of adults was both moving and painful. That night at the public library, Raphael and Fiona exchanged their findings. The reporter was shocked by Anna Carmen's testimony, while Raphael could hardly believe the emails Fiona had obtained. "We need to act with extreme caution," Raphael warned. "Olivia has powerful connections, and Lyman Pharmaceuticals is a multinational corporation with armies of lawyers." Fiona nodded, her instinct for a big headline momentarily suppressed by a desire for justice. "What do you suggest?" "Third, a two-pronged approach. You prepare the story, but don't publish it yet. I present the evidence to Judge Pietro in a private hearing, requesting the immediate suspension of Chiara's visits and Olivia's removal from the case." The journalist considered the proposal. What if the judge doesn't agree to a private hearing? If this goes to an open session, Olivia and Chiara will be alerted. "It's a risk we need to take," Raphael admitted, "but Pietro has a reputation for discretion and good judgment. I believe he will understand the delicacy of the situation." While they were devising their joint plan, neither of them noticed the discreet figure sitting several tables away, partially hidden by a stack of books, but perfectly positioned to observe them. It was Viola, the nurse who had cared for Helena and Theo, and who apparently had more connections and loyalties than anyone could have suspected. As soon as Raphael and Fiona parted ways, she picked up her phone and quickly typed a message. "Muller and the journalist are cooperating. They have evidence. They are planning to go to court before publishing anything." The answer came almost instantly. "Stop them. Use any means necessary." On her phone screen, the contact's name shone brightly, Dr. O. Allianz. The morning before the crucial hearing dawned with a clear sky and bright sunshine, contrasting sharply with the palpable tension hanging over everyone involved in the case. In Raphael's apartment, Theo ate breakfast in silence, observing his father, who, despite his impeccable suit, showed clear signs of fatigue. "Will everything be all right, Dad?" the boy finally asked, his small voice revealing the worry he had been trying to hide. Raphael forced a smile, stroking his son's hair. "Of course you will, champ. Today is an important day to ensure that Helena can stay with Rose. And maybe Maybe you can see each other soon. Theo's eyes lit up at the prospect. Promise, I have so many things to show her. I learned to play a new song on the piano, and I want to see if my liver can tell her any secrets. Raphael couldn't help but smile genuinely. The innocence with which the children viewed their extraordinary connection was both touching and a reminder of what truly mattered amidst all that legal and ethical battle. We'll do our best. Theo, I promise. Meanwhile, Rose was helping Helena get dressed for school. The girl had insisted on maintaining her normal routine, despite the tumultuous events around her. It was a Wednesday like any other for her. There would be music class, her favorite. Grandma, can I bring Mom's picture today? It's show and tell day at school and I want to talk about it. Rose hesitated. In recent days, she had deliberately avoided mentioning Agnes, fearing that the subject could be used against them in court. The psychologist's words echoed in her mind. She demonstrates a healthy relationship with her mother's memory, neither denial nor excessive idealization. Sure, my love. How about that one from the park, when you two were having a picnic? Helena nodded enthusiastically. Rose searched for the photograph in the small keepsake box she kept on the shelf. Upon opening it, she noticed something strange. The photos seemed to have been rearranged. She was sure the picnic photo was on top, but now it was in the middle of the bunch. Had someone been tampering with their belongings? The suspicion was unsettling, but there was no time to investigate. The driver Raphael had sent to take them to court was already waiting at the door. At Central Hospital, Olivia Allianz had been in her office since the early hours of the morning, visibly agitated. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Messages from Viola, calls from Chiara, emails from Lyman Pharmaceuticals lawyers. The web she had carefully woven over the years was about to unravel. Doctor, the board is requesting your presence in the meeting room, her assistant informed her through the half-open door. It seems urgent. Olivia took a deep breath, adjusting her impeccable white coat, a symbolic armor she always wore in times of crisis. Upon entering the meeting room, she found not only the board of directors, but also two men she immediately recognized as investigators from the Medical Ethics Committee. Dr. Allianz, the chairman of the board, began, his expression grave. These people have some questions about the case of Agnes Lehmann and her involvement with Lyman Pharmaceuticals during the period in question. The doctor felt her blood run cold, but she maintained her composure. Years of practice in concealing her true emotions had prepared her for moments like this. Certainly, he replied with a professional smile. I am available to clarify any doubts. At the Central Forum, Judge Pietro Ollins had already begun his review of the documents submitted by Raphael and Fiona Salon's team. The journalist had not published her story, fulfilling the agreement, but had provided all the evidence for the legal process, keeping secure copies as a guarantee. The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m., and all interested parties had been notified, except Olivia, whose presence was not legally required at this stage, although the evidence directly implicated her. It was a strategic decision by Raphael and Victor, aimed at preventing her from preparing pre-trial defenses. Chiara Lehmann arrived punctually, elegant as always in a navy blue suit that exuded authority. Her lawyer, Dr. Allen, seemed less confident than in previous hearings, suggesting that perhaps he had already been briefed on some of the new evidence. Rose and Helena entered next, accompanied by Raphael. The girl immediately ran to the businessman, hugging his legs with genuine affection. Uncle Raphael, I missed you, she exclaimed. Is Theo feeling better? When can I see him? Raphael knelt down to be at her eye level. He's doing great, Helena, and he misses you very much too. If all goes well today, you'll be able to see each other very soon. Chiara watched the interaction with an unreadable expression, but her eyes revealed an internal struggle. For the first time since the beginning of the process, there seemed to be a hesitation in her resolve. When Judge Pietro entered, everyone stood up. His expression was even more serious than usual. Before we officially begin, I would like to inform you that I have reviewed the documents submitted by Mr. Muller and consider the evidence sufficiently serious to warrant a special procedure. This will not be a typical custody hearing, but a preliminary investigation into possible obstruction of justice, falsification of medical records, and potentially other more serious crimes. A murmur echoed through the room. Chiara visibly paled. "First, I would like to hear Mr. Muller present the evidence he has discovered." Raphael stood up, leaning briefly on the table to disguise the trembling in his hands. He was not a man accustomed to showing vulnerability, but the events of the last few weeks had affected him deeply. "Your Honor, the evidence we have presented conclusively demonstrates that Agnes Limen's medical record was deliberately falsified in 2017, not by me as initially suggested, but by Anna Carmen, then an administrative employee at Central Hospital, acting under the direct instructions of Dr. Olivia Alliance." He went on to detail Anna's testimony, the system access logs, the emails obtained by Fiona Sallin, and the financial connection between Olivia and Limen Pharmaceuticals. The reason was to prevent Agnes from testifying in a lawsuit against the pharmaceutical company related to undisclosed side effects of an experimental drug. By altering her blood type in the system, they automatically made her incompatible with potential donors, effectively sabotaging her chances of receiving a transplant in time. Judge Pietro listened attentively, occasionally making notes. When Raphael finished, he turned to Chiara. "Ms. Lehman, were you aware of these facts when you initiated the custody proceedings?" Chiara stood up slowly, her usual confidence visibly shaken. "Not entirely, Your Honor. But did she have any knowledge of Dr. Allianz's involvement in her sister's case?" There was a moment of hesitation. Everyone in the room seemed to hold their breath. "I suspected something was amiss. Agnes contacted me shortly before she left, mentioning that she had discovered something about Olivia and the pharmaceutical company. At the time, I didn't give it much thought." Her voice faltered slightly. "A mistake I deeply regret. And what was his true motivation in seeking custody of Helena? Revenge against Mr. Muller, as originally alleged, or was there another motive?" Chiara glanced quickly at Helena, who was watching her with childlike curiosity, oblivious to the implications of the adult conversation unfolding. "Initially, yes, it was revenge," she admitted, surprising everyone with her frankness. "I blamed the medical system, and by extension Mr. Muller, for Agnes's loss. But also," she paused, searching for the right words, "I also felt guilt. Agnes tried to contact me several times in the final months, wanting reconciliation. I rejected her, clinging to old resentments. When I learned that Helena had donated part of her liver to save Muller's son, I felt as if the universe was mocking me. The niece I never knew showing a compassion I was unable to offer my own sister." The unexpected confession created a dense silence in the room. Rose, who until then had looked at Chiara with evident resentment, seemed momentarily moved. "I understand," said Judge Pietro after a pause. "Mr. Muller, is there anything else you would like to add before my preliminary decision?" Raphael looked at Helena, then at Rose, then at Chiara, and finally at the judge. "Just this, Your Honor. Whatever your decision, I hope you prioritize Helena's well-being. She has already suffered enough losses. She deserves stability and love, not to be a pawn in adult games, whether motivated by guilt, revenge, or corporate greed." The judge nodded, appreciating the sincerity. "Ms. Lyman, in light of these revelations and your own admission, do you maintain your request for custody?" Chiara took a deep breath. Her face, usually a mask of perfect control, now showed the signs of the emotional battle she was waging internally. "No, Your Honor, I withdraw my request." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. "Very well. Considering the evidence presented and the best interests of the minor, I determine that Helena remain under the legal guardianship of Rose, with Mr. Muller designated as secondary guardian in case the primary guardian is unable to act." The judge paused meaningfully. "Regarding the evidence of manipulation of medical records and possible corporate conspiracy, I will immediately forward it to the Public Prosecutor's Office for criminal investigation." The gavel struck with purpose. Rose hugged Helena, tears of relief streaming freely down her wrinkled face. Raphael felt an immense weight lift from his shoulders. Not only was the custody case resolved, but the truth about what had happened to Agnes would finally come to light. Chiara surprisingly approached Rose and Helena. Her face showed a vulnerability never seen before. "I don't expect forgiveness," he whispered to Rose, "but I would like, if you'll allow me, to get to know Helena properly. Not as a guardian or authority figure, just as An aunt. Agnes would like that. Rose, after a moment of hesitation, nodded slightly. Perhaps. In time. Helena, observing the interaction, unexpectedly extended her hand to Chiara. Mom used to say that forgiving makes the heart lighter. You can come visit me if you want. I can show you my seashell collection. The simplicity and generosity of the gesture brought tears to Chiara's eyes, possibly the first in many years. Meanwhile, at Central Hospital, Olivia's condition was rapidly deteriorating. Investigators had found detailed records on her computer of her collaboration with Lehman Pharmaceuticals, including explicit emails about neutralizing Agnes Lehman. When officers arrived to arrest her, Olivia tried to escape through the back of the hospital, only to be intercepted by Fiona Sallin, who was documenting everything with her professional camera. The image of the renowned doctor being escorted out of the hospital that had been her kingdom would be on the front page of every newspaper the following morning. That afternoon, on Raphael's rooftop, a small celebration brought together the protagonists of that extraordinary drama. Theo, radiant with joy, showed Helena all his favorite toys and books. The two children, united by a bond that transcended the physical, seemed to have their own language, made of laughter and shared secrets. Rose watched the scene with a serene smile. Beside her, Raphael offered her a glass of champagne. To a new phase, he proposed as a toast. To a new family, Rose corrected gently. Raphael considered the word family, something that, despite all his wealth and power, he had never truly had since the loss of his wife years before. Looking at the children playing, at Rose with her gentle smile, and even at Chiara, who had been invited and remained discreetly in a corner of the room, he felt that perhaps finally he could understand the true meaning of that term. "Helena," Theo called excitedly, "I want to show you something." The boy lifted his shirt, revealing the surgical scar, almost identical to Helena's. "We're the same now. Scar siblings." Helena laughed, showing her own mark. "Liver siblings forever." Raphael approached the children, kneeling down to be at their level. "You know, Helena, if you and Rose want to, we'd love for you to come live here with us. There's plenty of space and Theo would be so happy." Helena looked at Rose, who nodded gently. The girl then turned to Raphael, her eyes shining with an unspoken question. Can I call you Dad?" he asked hesitantly. "I never had one, and you take care of us like Mum used to say dads do." Raphael felt his heart swell in his chest, involuntary tears blurring his vision. "It would be an honor, Helena." "The greatest honor in the world." Theo joined the spontaneous embrace that followed, and soon Rose was also pulled into the family circle. From her corner, Chiara watched the scene with a mixture of melancholy and hope. Perhaps it wasn't too late for her to find redemption and genuine connection as well. In the months that followed, justice took its course. Anna Carmen returned to the country to testify, receiving partial immunity in exchange for her full cooperation. Olivia Alliance and several executives of Lehman Pharmaceuticals were indicted on multiple charges. The pharmaceutical company was required to establish a compensation fund for all victims of the experimental drug, with amounts exceeding billions. The Agnes Lehman Institute New Beginnings thrived under the co-direction of Raphael and, surprisingly, Chiara, who brought her business experience to the foundation. The institute revolutionized the transplant system in the region, becoming a national benchmark in organ donation policies and equal treatment of patients. As for the small, makeshift family that had formed through extraordinary circumstances, it found its own rhythm. Rose remained Helena's legal guardian, but they all lived together in the spacious penthouse that Raphael had transformed to comfortably accommodate everyone. Theo and Helena attended the same school, inseparable as only siblings at heart, and by blood can be. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, while the children played in the rooftop garden, Raphael found Rose gazing at the city skyline, a peaceful smile on her face. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently. "In Agnes," the lady replied, in how proud she would be of Helena. "And perhaps," she hesitated briefly, "perhaps even happy with how it all turned out. She always believed that there are no coincidences, only the universe conspiring to balance things out." Raphael reflected on these words. Agnes's tragedy had, in an unexpected and painful way, paved the way for something beautiful, the healing of her son, the exposure of a corporate conspiracy, Chiara's redemption, and the formation of a family united by bonds that transcended blood and conventions. On the lawn, Helena chased Theo in a lively game. Her crystal-clear laughter echoed through the afternoon air, a sonorous reminder that even in the darkest circumstances, life finds ways to bloom again. And as the sun began its slow descent on the horizon, bathing the city in golden hues, a soft song could be heard, the same melody that Agnes used to sing to Helena to help her fall asleep. It was the little girl who now sang it, teaching it to Theo, thus ensuring that her mother's memory and the lessons of kindness and courage she had passed on would continue to live on in a new generation. The donation of part of his liver had not only saved Theo, it had healed wounded hearts, revealed hidden truths, exposed injustices, and forged a new definition of family. In the end, the true miracle was not medical or biological, but human, the capacity of love and compassion to transcend loss, overcome betrayal, and create connections capable of withstanding the greatest challenges. And if someone were to ask Helena if she would do it all again, knowing all the revelations and complications that would follow, her answer would be simple and immediate, coming from the depths of her childlike heart that carried the wisdom of a much older soul. 1,000 times yes, because family is who we choose, and I chose all of you. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Helena and Theo's journey has touched your hearts. To continue being moved by stories like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel, activate the notification bell, and like this video. Every week, we bring you new narratives that explore the depth of human feelings and the beauty of the bonds we form. Find our special playlist of stories about family by clicking the link on the left. And don't forget to share in the comments which moment in this story moved you the most. We look forward to reading your impressions.